Hey, Bronze Medal Moms. Last week we talked about exhaustion, and this week we're naming the thing that's underneath of it. Because it's not just that you're tired, it's that you're carrying everything. The planning, the remembering, the anticipating, the invisible project management of your entire household. Because for the longest time, I knew I felt overwhelmed, but I couldn't verbalize or explain why. And then I learned the phrase mental load, and suddenly it all made sense. It wasn't weakness, it wasn't failure, it was this invisible weight. So this week, we're talking with Instagram trailblazer Paige Connell. You may know her from her Instagram account at SheIsAPaigeTurner, about what the mental load actually is, why it's so heavy for women, but especially moms, and what happens when we stop pretending we're fine carrying it. So if you've ever thought, why am I only one who knows when the dentist appointment is, this one's for you. Because naming the mental load is the first step to lightening it. We also have a fun announcement. Our brand new Bronze Medal Mom website is live. So go check it out and join the community.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Bronze Medal Moms, the podcast where we aren't going for gold, we're going for bronze on the daily. I'm Amy.
And I'm Amanda, and we are here to remind you that you don't have to be perfect to show up, survive, and even thrive in motherhood.
Hey, Bronze Medal Moms. Today we have a super important conversation, and it's something that so many of us, myself included, have felt but couldn't verbalize it, or maybe you still don't know how to verbalize it.
Exactly. And if you ever felt like your brain is running a to-do list, even when your body is exhausted, that's the mental load. And we're talking about today with someone who's started real viral conversations around this, Paige Turner. She is on Instagram as SheIsAPaigeTurner.
And I have to thank you for being here, Paige. I have to say your work and what I've seen actually helped me finally explain to my spouse that I've been married to for almost 25 years, like I could verbalize it. And that's huge. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we love that you talked so clearly about the mental load. And again, I had never even heard that phrase. So that was one, just like eye-opening to me. But it's not just the tasks. It's like the hidden cognitive work behind them. So like, tell us a little more about how you define mental load and when you realized it wasn't just household chores, basically.
Yeah, sure. So it's not just one thing. I think that's the hardest part about the mental load. It encompasses a few different things. So if you're talking clinical terms, you mentioned one, cognitive labor, emotional labor, invisible labor. There's all this work that goes into what is known as the mental load. I think the way a lot of people recognize it in their life is it's kind of that like constant humming or the never ending to-do list in your brain of all the things you need to know, do, remember, anticipate, plan for, right? So it's keeping that running tally. Some people think about it like open tabs in a computer. If you close one, you'll never remember it, right? So you have to keep it there in your brain. You have to keep it there on your phone, whatever it might be. And so the way I think about the mental load too is one of the hardest parts about it is it's not necessarily a physical task. It's the mental work that's going into it. And when you check something off that to-do list, you typically add more things to it, right? So,
Right.
When you cook dinner, well, now you have to wash the dishes. And when you're washing the dishes, you realize you're out of dish soap. And when you were cooking dinner, you realize you're out of ketchup. And so you have to add those to the grocery list, but you actually get those at two separate places. So you have two separate grocery lists and you just keep going, right? And so like the work doesn't stop. It just continues on. And so I think that's one of the hardest parts for the person who carries the mental load, which is they are the person carrying that invisible work constantly. And it's very hard when somebody says, just tell me what to do. How can I help? You can tell them to buy ketchup, but that doesn't really do anything. That doesn't really save you from that kind of mental planning that you're constantly doing.
Right. And I think so many of us feel this and never had the words for it because even before we had kids, my husband and I, we were married for 11 years before we had kids. And I remember carrying this load of household things. We both worked outside of the home and offices, but I just had this. I didn't know it was the mental load, and I would get frustrated, and he would say, just give me a to-do list, and I would give him a to-do list, and I'm like, well, that doesn't help because then I have to make sure you've done the to-do list. I'm still following up,
right?
Still, checking it. And then when you have a child, that just exponentially multiplies your mental load. But why do you think it lands so powerfully with women specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it falls with women because we've been conditioned to take on this work from a very young age. I always say, we joke about how little girls have baby dolls and little boys have trucks. And, I think people are getting better at saying like, oh, we give every kid everything. But if we really think back to our childhoods, right? What do you do with a baby doll? You take care of it. What do you do with a truck? You drive it. Right? You don't take care of a truck. They're not washing their truck or changing the oil or replacing the tires, right? But like my daughter loves babies right now. She loves playing babies. She's feeding that baby. She's changing that baby's diaper. She's taking care of that baby. Yeah. And my son does it too. He loves to do it with my daughter. But, we're conditioned from a very young age to see this work, to feel valued when we do this work, right? Like our value is tied to this kind of work. We're taught to babysit from a very young age, right? Like when you're a young
And
group,
that's how you make money as a little girl. You babysit.
Mm-hmm.
you babysit. You're told like you should be a babysitter. That's a great job for someone like you. You should be a nanny in high school or college. That's a great job. That's a great summer job, right? We're not telling boys to be nannies.
No.
And so from a very young age, we are taught to think about other people, anticipate things, take care of other people. And so then when we get to marriage and parenthood, what I find happens is women were already carrying a disproportionate amount of the mental load. It probably didn't feel debilitating for some of us, right? Like for me, like it was what's the big deal? Just two of us. Like there's not that much going on.
Right.
But the stakes are higher when you have kids, and it's not just a little bit more work, it's exponentially more work. And women also take this on because lack of paid paternity leave and maternity leave, but men don't take time off. And so the work lands on her plate, right? And so she's the one going to all the doctor's appointments and figuring out the feeding schedule and figuring out how to soothe this baby and doing all this work. And then she goes back to work, right? And keeps that. She keeps it. Even though she's back at work and her partner's back at work, she's the owner of that. She knows all of it. She's expected to take the sick days, right? She's expected to take the flexible career. And so, we see this just kind of culminate in motherhood, but we were working towards this the entire time. And there's systemic barriers like lack of paid leave, lack of affordable childcare that put women in a position where they're going to disproportionately carry this work.
I feel like that's so interesting. And it just made me think of, because really, like, think about even when you do get married. I don't want to use this term because it's so much more, but it's you're excited because you're playing house. You registered and got all new dishes. You registered, you got all new things, and you get to put this together and put this life together. And I think it is exciting and fun. And so women take on a lot of that because we're like, no, this is so much fun. It's great. But then when you add the kids into it, you're like, well, no, I can't do all this. I can't do all this at all. And I need someone else to take part of this as well. I think that's such an interesting thing of just how it shifts,
Yeah.
Well,
and I thought about this the other day too with, I was actually listening to one of your reels, and I was having a conversation with my husband once, and so let's be honest, it was an argument. And he was saying, do you even know how much we pay in property taxes? And I went back to him and I go, do you have any idea when your kid's next eyeglass appointment is? And he was like, no. And I go, well, so I don't know how property taxes. You handle that. I handle this.
Well, and some of those, we'll get into that here in a second. Some of those reels frustrate me when I think they were going I saw them around the holidays, right? Like, well, I don't know how much the mortgage is, so it's fine that he doesn't know X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that is true.
I would love to just have to pay the mortgage once a month, which I do also, and not worry about the day-to-day of everything else. So I'm like, I didn't like those either. They made me mad. I'm like, wait, no, that's not better.
Yeah, no, it's not better. It's a shift between, I think we've gone from, okay, I can't do it alone. Okay, we divide and conquer, but now it's really divide and conquer is not it. That's not solving. It's really understanding what the mental load is with each, what the mom is taking on.
Well, a lot of these tasks that men will cite actually don't have a lot of mental load. Not that they have none, They just don't have a lot of mental load, right? So women tend to take on the tasks like cooking, cleaning, laundry, things that are kind of never ending. They're just perpetual. They're always happening, right? Like the second you're done cooking, you're making your next meal. Like it just is constant.
Yeah.
You fold the laundry, there's dirty laundry again. It just never stops, right? So you're constantly going. And those are also tasks where you're also constantly thinking. You're constantly meal planning, keeping inventory of what's in the fridge, in the pantry, what your kids like, what they don't like, if you have allergies, like all of the things, right? So you're constantly thinking. The mortgage is something that typically most people have on auto pay.
Yeah.
Right.
And it happens once a month.
Yep.
And once you pay it, you don't think about it. I would even say like the taxes. To be honest, there's not a lot of planning and anticipating other than budgeting appropriately. But like we don't control our taxes in our town, right? Like they're going to tax me regardless. I don't really get a say. I'm just going to get the bill and I have to pay that bill.
You could maybe fight it once a year.
Right. So I think it's one of those things where, we're often comparing apples and oranges. I get oil changes. And I handle doctor's appointments. Well, doctor's appointments come with forms. They come with calling to book the appointment. They come with going to the appointment. They come with all of these things. And so, when you go there, you have to be able to tell the doctor your kid's developmental milestones, be able to answer any questions the doctor has. It's very, very different than changing the oil when typically that's like the same process every 3 months, right? It's not this huge lift. And so what I find is they'll say, I do a lot around here. Men, well, I do so much around here. It's not that they don't. It's not that they're not doing it. It's that the work is very, very different. And so even if you're doing the same amount of tasks, if the cognitive labor of the tasks that she holds is exponentially higher, she's going to feel more burnt out and exhausted. And also, like, I think the biggest complaint a lot of women have is like, why do I have to keep reminding you to mow the lawn? Why do I have to keep reminding you to take out the trash? You take out the trash, but I've had to ask you 3 times. So actually the mental load of that task is still with me because I'm still the person in charge of it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and this is something, so this is such a great little segue into this. This is something that I think I struggle with, a lot of women are going to struggle with, that it's how do you start that conversation with your husband? And I think it's important to know that that conversation might not start like sunshine and roses. It might not be, received the best way, but how would you recommend that someone listening now that they would start that conversation?
So it depends on your partner. I always say if you're going to have this conversation, you have to be in a relationship with somebody who is willing and able to have the conversation with you, right? So who is open to having these conversations and open to adapting and changing. And you want to know that you have a partner that loves you, cares about you, wants you to be happy, right? Like you need all these things. And I say this because there are women that don't have that, right?
Yeah.
Whose partner's like, I don't really care.
Right.
And I'm not going to change. And this is how it's going to be. So you have to be able to identify first and foremost, like, is it worth the effort here? And hopefully it is. If it is worth the effort, if your partner is willing and able, then you have to come to this conversation with intention. You can't mention these things in passing when he's unloading the dishwasher. You have to be having these conversations with intention, sitting down and saying, hey, next Tuesday after the kids go to bed, I want us to sit down. I want us to talk about the mental load of our home. I want us to talk about the work and figure out a way to share this in a more equitable way. In anticipation of this, I want you to think about the tasks that you're carrying. I'll think about the tasks that I'm carrying, and we'll come together and we'll have a discussion. I think what often happens is, we have these conversations in passing. Women will say, oh, you never do this or you never do that, or I need more help. I need this, I need that. And their partner says, great, tell me what to do. I'll do it. And she tells him, I need you to take out the trash. And that doesn't actually solve the problem. Like, it's not about the trash. It's not about any of those things. You need to sit down and really look at everything that's happening and say, like, how do we solve this problem? Because it's never just one task. It's really looking at the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you one thing. This is something my husband and I talk about a lot, and he is open and willing. And he started, 10 years ago saying, just tell me what to do. Just make me a list. And I'm like, well, I have a virtual assistant for that. I don't need somebody else to just give a list to. But now, and he listens to our podcast, so I know he's going to be listening, babe. But what he says now is, well, babe, my brain just works differently, right? And I'm like, but does it? Like, I know,
Does it?
but I know women, for instance, I see clutter. Men typically don't see clutter. But how do I get him to see it's not that his brain works differently? I don't know. Do I ask him to take over? Like, you're now in charge of all the school things. You keep track of all school things with her so that I can take that out of my brain. But I have to also, and I tell him, babe, I have to then trust that you're going to do it. Because if I don't have
Yeah.
that trust that it's going to get done timely and stuff isn't going to slip through the cracks, then it's still my mental load, and I might as well just do it myself.
Yeah, so I think this is a big one that comes up a lot. And, yes, there's something to be said about men, quote unquote, like not seeing this, or like not even men and women, just like people operating in different ways, right?
Yeah.
But there's this really great book called What's on Her Mind by a woman named Alison Whelan, and she did research on this. She's a researcher, and men will often say, she's more type A and I'm more laid back. Um, and that just isn't usually true. Like if you look at it, it's not that they're more type A or more laid back. It's that she's been responsible for that work. So she has to be more structured, more rigid because she's responsible for it. Or I hear a lot of men who will say, well, I have ADHD or whatever. A lot of women who have ADHD, and the women are still carrying that work regardless of the fact that they have ADHD, right? And so like what you find is that oftentimes it's not really an inherent thing that they are like incapable of it. I think oftentimes what has happened is we've conditioned women to see this work. So when you say like men don't see clutter, I remember vividly as a child, my mom coming home and being like, why are there shoes in the hallway? Why are there cups on the counter? Why are there socks in the hall? Like I remember that like as a kid being like, okay, my mom is taking inventory of
I feel
everything.
like I say that right now.
Yeah.
Right. And I do too. I think the difference is like a lot of young girls are conditioned to see that, right? To pick that up, to step in, to do that work. And men are not. Even the way we think about things like a bachelor pad, right? Like it's okay for men to kind of like live in filth.
Yeah.
Or live in like a yucky apartment that's not decorated or has the bare bones. We always say like divorced dad, right?
Yep.
The divorced dad's house. That is not acceptable for women. So it's not just what we're conditioned to see and to do, but also the expectations and standards we're held to. We are held to different standards. And so if I have a messy house, somebody will comment on that. If my husband had a messy house, nobody comments on that, right? So, it's the same way men feel like they're judged by the color of their lawn. Women are judged by how clean their home is, whether it's clutter-free or not, if their kid's hair is well done at school, if the outfit is matching, right? Like women are judged on appearances, and our value is often tied to them. And so it's not that your husband doesn't see it or his brain works differently. He's just never been held to the same standards or expectations. And so he doesn't feel as, I find most men don't feel as inclined to worry about it. Like, what's the big deal? Who cares?
Yeah.
Know?
They're easier to say, they're easier to lower the bar than we are.
Yeah. True. What is something that you see maybe in kind of your audience or some of, on social when you post these things that surprises you? Are there any themes that you see that really still surprise you in people's reactions, women's reactions?
No, I mean, I think the hardest thing is like for a lot of women is like there's a lot of unlearning here. So it's not just about the work, it's about how we view our time. I think, I was just talking today on my page about how so often, women's careers are seen as hobbies. So even if you have a high-powered career, even if you make a lot of money, it's seen as a hobby. So you just have to, you should do the doctor's appointments and the sick days because like your real calling is being a mother and like everything else is a hobby.
Right.
Even when you're the breadwinner, right? Like that is how we kind of view women in the workforce. And so a lot of it's unlearning how we are expected to show up. I hear a lot of women say, my husband and I, we actually make the same amount of money, or we work the same job, but he makes more money than I do.
Yeah.
So I do more laundry. And I always ask them, I'm like, well, does he work more than you, like hours? And she's like, no, we work the same hours. I'm like, so why is your partner buying your time, right? Like if he's making exponentially more money than you, that's great. Let's outsource some things. But he shouldn't be buying your time. There's no reason the person who's making quote unquote less money should have to do more work at home, right? When we're in a partnership, I think we are so conditioned to live like under capitalism here in the US and the patriarchy that we tie our worth to money. Right. So like, oh, well, he's worth more than me. So then I have to like do more to earn my keep around here. Yeah, and I'm like, that is such a weird way for us to build marriages because we married each other because we love each other and we have fun and we enjoy each other's company. We want to be parents together.
Right.
That has nothing to do with how much money we make. And so I feel like a lot of this work requires a lot of unlearning and deconstructing how we think about ourselves, how we value ourselves, what our worth is tied to, and a lot of teaching, which is really hard.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I definitely can see that for sure.
I will say you did mention one thing that you were shocked on your page. You said you were shocked that women were shocked that you don't do your husband's laundry. And for one, I've been asked not to do my husband's laundry once I washed a suit and shrunk it to the size of a child. He was like, okay, no more. But
It happens.
But I do think that we are like, yeah, will I iron a shirt for my husband if I'm ironing for myself tomorrow and I'm like, hey, do you need a shirt for tomorrow? I'll iron it. But I don't do his laundry. I don't iron his clothes. I don't make his doctor's appointments for him because he's a grown man. And I will say one thing that I started doing, which I don't do this for all things, of course, but like we are in the like I mean, we have 3 kids. There's a lot going on with the kids. There's a lot of communication with parents, doctors.
Yeah.
But we're doing, like evaluations for the kids for learning abilities, stuff like that. And I copy him on every single email. And I don't expect him to respond, but I want him to see like, these are the forms that I'm filling out. This is like, I want him to just see what I'm doing. And it's not that I then bring it up later and,
Right. Yeah.
boastful about it, but I just feel like it's a way of showing him like, I don't think you realize how many emails there are for, one doctor's appointment or, how hard it is to organize all that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one thing for me, I was sitting here thinking, it's not a one and done, right? Because I think I was so naive, like, oh, we're going to have this conversation and then it's going to be great. But I feel like
it's always going to be sunshine and roses.
We talk on this podcast a lot about stakeholder meetings, Paige, where I sit down my husband and daughter. I'm like, okay, in this season of life that we're in, maybe it's a busy theater season. What are our priorities as a family? What is a priority for my daughter? Maybe she doesn't need me when she wakes up and I can exercise, but she wants me there at bedtime. So I think having that same stakeholder kind of conversation with my husband, because sometimes what the mental load is now is not always going to be the same. So I think I was naive in thinking it was a one and done, where you really need to keep keep having those check-ins.
Oh yeah, it's never a one-time conversation. I mean, I think there's a lot of hard work in getting on the same page about what the mental load is, what it looks like, how to share it, how to divide labor. Like, I think you have to flex that muscle, and it takes a while to kind of like get a good groove. But I think when you have kids, especially, and just in general life, right?
Yeah.
Something is always changing. You get a new job, your partner gets a new job, your kid changes schools, they start a new sport that's super demanding. Whatever it is, there's always something, right? A kid is sick, somebody's traveling. There is always something. So I always tell people, you can work on this forever. You're never not talking about it. You have to. I mean, you have to talk about these things, because what I find is when people get really comfortable too, and they feel like they're in a really, really good groove and they stop talking about this stuff, that is when we default back into certain roles and we take things on. If we're not like explicitly talking about it, it's very easy for things like resentment to grow and frustration to grow, because you're not having the conversations. You're making assumptions about what they're doing and what you're doing and who should pick it up and who's not picking it up. And to your point, sometimes so much of this is invisible that if you've picked something up with, say your kid plays hockey and hockey's really intense, and you've picked up the schedule and you picked up the practice and you picked up the carpool and you've done all of that, but your partner never saw any of it, didn't know about any, but like, you're going to be resentful, but your partner doesn't even know what's happening.
Doesn't even know.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and when
that's hard.
Yeah, it's
No,
very
that's okay.
hard. Well, and I used to work in an office outside of the home like my husband. So we both commuted in the morning. We worked in an office. We commuted home. When I started working from home, one of my biggest fears, and it ended up happening because we got in the rut of not continually communicating, was that I then became more of the default stay-at-home parent, right? So if the kiddo was sick, well, he wouldn't call into the office because I'm already home. But I'm like, yeah, but I still work. And it was really easy, if you're not having that conversation, to fall into that rut. And I built up that resentment. Not that he did it on purpose. We just fell into that rut. And
he's probably legitimately thinking, oh, this is just easier because she's at home, but then not realizing it's still like I'm actually home with a sick kid today, but I'm like, there's still jobs. We're still doing work.
Because sometimes I would tell him, I feel like our mental load was split more evenly when we both were outside of the home. Now, and I'm a worker.
Chris and I were both outside of the home. We were working at the same place. We had our offices were right next to each other. So it was super easy to divide and conquer everything, and everything was communicated. And now, like I work other places and from home, and he works a different place. That there's a big shift of who does what and who can stay home with the kids when there's sick time,
Yeah. But I think regardless, stay-at-home mom, work-from-home mom, and we say moms and dads, men and women, but this goes for partners, anyone, I assume. Any relationship is going to have this struggle of one partner carrying the mental load.
Well, I think it's also important to note that the mental load is not just limited to our marriages and parenting. I always joke that if you have siblings, you can think about who coordinates the gift for mom at Christmas.
Yes.
Who says, hey guys, I think we should get mom this. Can you all Venmo me? Right? Who is doing that work? It becomes very clear very fast that there's mental load in lots of different relationship dynamics. You can have this at work. You can have this with friends. I mean, it really just depends on what your life looks like. It is not exclusive to marriage. The problem with marriage is, typically when you're married and have children, you live together. And so you're operating a home together and a life together. And that requires a lot of work. And so the mental load tied to that is very high and heavy. And so I think we often hear about it as it relates to motherhood and marriage because it's the obvious place where we are struggling, where people are struggling. But the mental load is something that everyone has. And this always comes up. Men will say, like, we have mental load too. Yeah, everyone does. I mean, everybody's planning, anticipating, thinking about things like that. It's not exclusive to women. The question is, are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it for 5 other people? Right. And that's the difference, I think, that you often find with women, which is they're carrying the mental load not just for themselves and their partner, but themselves, their partner, the dog, their brother, everybody. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to also say when we're saying like this mental load, the goal is not to not have a mental load. You're always going to have it. The goal is not to like put more on someone else or it's just finding the balance of what is functioning for you, what is healthy for you, and what works in your family.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you a question. So I know that I'm sure you've heard this, that, women say they feel seen when they are like, I finally have words to explain to my husband. Like, what does that mean to you when you hear that from another mom or wife?
That they have the words to explain it or that they don't?
Yeah. That they finally, because you're putting that mental load out there, they're like, this has helped me have this conversation. This works so much better now.
Yeah. It's funny because I always tell people I also couldn't explain it. So when I was in the thick of it, I couldn't have told you what it was or why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I knew I was exhausted and burnt out and resentful towards my partner. I knew that I couldn't name one reason or another. It didn't feel like there was any one thing that I could point to and say, that's it. That's why I'm so stressed out. I heard it on a podcast and it was like a light bulb went off in my brain and I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's what
I'm feeling.
Struggling with. That is so oh my gosh, finally somebody's saying it out loud. And that was the starting point for me. And so when I hear people say that I do that for them, obviously it feels great to know that I'm helping other people because I remember how desperate I felt at the time, how I was so I was just so frustrated by the fact that I felt like I had everything that I wanted to have and I was so unhappy. I was like, what is going on? Like, this is so much work and I feel like nobody sees me or values me. But like at the same time, like, what am I mad about? Like the laundry, I don't even know what I'm frustrated about. Like, it can't be the dishwasher. Like, that sounds stupid, right? To say that. Say like, I'm mad about the dishwasher. And so having somebody say it out loud can help you feel validated, which is great. It can give you the tools and the language to start to articulate it. And what I tell people all the time is like, I'm glad that I'm able to help you articulate it. What you have to decide now is like, do I want to flex this muscle and talk about it with my therapist? Do I want to talk about it with my friends? Do I want to talk about it with my partner? Because finally being able to put words to it can feel so freeing, but sometimes it's still not enough for us to like really move the needle. We need to like really start to understand it. And so one of the things that I always recommend after feeling comfortable being able to talk about the mental load is being able to actually identify it in your home. So the invisible labor that you're doing, whether you make a list, I keep mine on a reminders app on my phone, like every task that I have to do, every little thought that pops into my head, it goes into my reminders app. I really encourage people, like, if you've gotten to a place where you can now say like, okay, I think the reason I feel burnt out is this mental load piece, like this invisible labor that I'm carrying. Okay, well, what is the invisible labor? How can we start to identify what that actually looks like? So then you can actually start to work with your partner or whomever is in your life to say, okay, this is the work
Yeah.
How do we share this in a way that feels fair and sustainable? And that's going to look different for every single person. But it really, for me, it felt empowering. It felt like, okay, I can finally have this conversation in a way that feels productive. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we're all missing, which is like, how do I do this in a way that actually feels like I'm getting somewhere?
Yeah.
You don't want to feel like you're just complaining. You want
Right.
to feel like
Yeah.
you're understanding and moving towards a
Right.
goal in the end.
Well, and I feel like I
Yes.
know for my partner, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So if I haven't verbalized it, but I'm just frustrated about something and it's the mental load, but he doesn't know what that looks like, and I can't verbalize exactly what it is, then we're kind of stuck. So I love that tip.
I still remember
taking an
I still remember when Rogers, our second one, was a baby, and maybe I did take on the first one myself. I don't know. Maybe I did do more than my fair share. But when we had him, and there was a struggle. I don't remember the exact details, but there was a struggle, like something with the baby or taking care of something, and maybe I had to leave. And my husband goes, "Well, I don't know what to do." And I looked at him, I go, "I don't know what to do." And he goes, "You don't?" He's like, "I thought you just know this stuff. Like, you know how to take care of babies." And I was like, "I am learning this with you.
Mhm.
You know, you're the dad. You have just as much power as I do. I promise." And he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh." And honestly, since then, it's like he needed this wake up call of like, "Oh, I do know what to do. I am a good
Yeah.
dad. I can totally do this." But he had just been kind of trained,
Conditioned. Yeah.
conditioned to be like, "No, she knows better than me because she's been trained for this her whole life."
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. And we kind of assume certain roles. I was talking about maternity leave at the beginning. It's like, if you're going mat leave and your partner doesn't have any, chances are you're going to like one doctor's appointment a week for those
Yeah.
first couple of months, every other week,
Yeah.
right? And so you're the doctor's appointment person, but then weirdly you go back to work and you're still the doctor's appointment person because like now you've been doing it for a couple of months and you've gone to 10 doctor's appointments already. You and the doctor have rapport. So of course you're going to keep going.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh, wait, so now I'm the doctor's appointment forever? Like that's what I
Right.
have to do forever? Like that's so many doctor's appointments and it's so much work and it's so much knowing and relaying to your partner, right? Like all these things. And so I think it's one of those things too where it's like a lot of men will be like, well, women just inherently know these things. And we don't. We
And
don't
we
know
don't.
these things.
Right.
We
Or some-
don't.
yeah.
We're learning with you. And I find a lot of women, this is part of the mental load too, which is something happens, for example, right? A sleep regression. The first thing a lot of women I know will do, they text their group chat. Hey, did your baby have a sleep regression at 5 months old? What did you do? How did you try it? Did you try this? Did you do that? Have you read this book? Did you do this course? Right? They're talking to each other. They're building community. They're asking questions. They call the pediatrician. They do research. They follow the sleep consultant on Instagram, right? They do all of this work. And what I find with a lot of men is they just assume that like, oh, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out, right?
Figure it out.
And so she has this mental
We'll
load
figure
of
it out
doing
is the
this
key
work.
phrase.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where they come to their partner and they'll say like, hey, this is another frustrating part for some women, which is they'll come to their partner and say like, hey, I've been doing all this research. I think we should try this. And their partner says like, I don't think we should do that. And she says, well, then what do you think we should do? And he's like, I don't know. And she's like, right, but I've been spending all this time, right? And that's the mental load, like spending all that time researching and caring and thinking and asking. And for better or for worse, social media is great because it gives you access to so much information. It's also my career, right? So like I see the value in it, but I also think like the second you become a mom or you're pregnant, you interact with one video about a baby, your entire feed is going to become about babies and kids and motherhood. And that's not an accident. I mean, you're being retargeted. Like these brands are targeting you. It's very intentional. What I find is men don't have that same behavior on social media and therefore they don't get the same kind of content and therefore they don't feel the same kind of pressure either, which is like people always joke like being a mom on social media is like baby-led weaning. No, not baby-led weaning. Breastfeeding, not breastfeeding. Formula. And it's like the whole thing. You're like, oh my God, like everything I do is wrong.
Yeah.
And so you're inundated with like information overload and then it's your job to figure out what feels right for your family and then to tell your partner. I remember to your point, my husband one time was like, what's the baby's feeding schedule or something? And I was like, I don't know. Like it has to change. Like if she's getting older, we have to adjust it. He's like, well, what should it be? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, well, you work from home. So you're with her all day. And I said, okay, great. If I worked in an office and she was with a nanny all day, would we ask the nanny what her feeding schedule is or would we decide?
Right.
And he was like, well, we would decide. And I was like, right.
Right.
So we need to decide together, regardless if I'm the one who's in closer proximity to this child all day, right? So, I think there's so much of that where we have to say, like, hold on, like, I don't just inherently know these things. Like, I took a lot of time and effort to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's it too. We take all the time and effort to do this. Like, I remember the first thing. So we have 1 and 2, and then we had a surprise baby. The first thing I did when I found out I was pregnant, because I was over 40, was I typed in over 40 and pregnant on Facebook and found a new community.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm going to need to talk to these women. All my friends we're done. We're done having kids. I'm apparently not done. And the first thing I did was find a community of support because I knew I was going to need it. Not because anything negative to my husband. Like, I knew but I also knew he was probably just going to be in shock for a good month.
Well, and I think too that's why validation is so important. It also helps other women realize we're not feeling this alone. Like, we all are struggling with this. And that's something we talk a lot about here on the podcast too, is like, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So women know we're all not that different. We're all struggling through the same things. And so I think that validation piece of the mental load is why that's so powerful. It's a powerful part of this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely, what do they always say? Like, nobody has a unique experience, right? Like, we're all living like a very similar thing. And I always tell people, like, I think we're made to feel really bad about these dynamics. So, when women speak up and say that they're struggling, they're either told, like, hey, be grateful. You have one of the good ones. Like, there's some men who do nothing, right? Who've never changed a diaper. Or, hey, his dad never once took him to a doctor's appointment. So, like, at least he took them to a doctor's appointment, right? So you're also kind of like gaslit into being thankful for it, even though it's not equal in a sense or fair.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that aspect. And then if things are not great and people are like, yeah, that's not great, but also, like, you married him, like, that was your choice. Like,
right.
And
you know
I
what
think,
you were doing. Yeah.
but people don't realize that, like, so much changes after kids that, like, you cannot know what the work will look like, how to share that work, what your partner will be like in parenting. You can't know those things, right? And so we place a lot of this blame back on women for men's lack of education or lack of effort in these areas. And so women very rarely speak up, or they whisper it to a friend because they're like, who am I? Like, at least my husband gets up with the baby sometimes. Like, her husband doesn't even bother, right? So it's this really tricky dynamic where, like, women are made to feel like they have to be thankful for the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. And also, as a society, I understand why men get frustrated, right? If I'm a dad and I walk through the grocery store we have 4 kids. If my husband walks through the grocery store with 4 kids, he's going to get smiles and like, oh, yeah, cute. Like, that's nice. If I do that, it's like, oh my God, this lady's taking up the whole aisle, right? Yeah. Like, with all her kids, like, get out of here. And there's always this judgment. I always tell him, I'm like, if my girls show up to school with messy hair, I will be judged for that. If dad drops them off with messy hair, he did his best. Exactly. He did his best.
The dads are so low.
Not fair. Yeah. Yeah, that's not fair, right? And so that also shows up where men are like, it's not a big deal, babe. And women are sitting there like, well, it is a big deal when I'm the person who gets blamed. Or when, I was at the front desk of my daughter's school, I sit there during speech therapy and a dad came in and had a lunchbox. He's like, so-and-so forgot her lunchbox. And the front desk said, what's her teacher's name? And he said, I don't know. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because not only does it mean you don't participate and don't get the emails and like any of those things, it also means you're probably not talking to your child, because your child, like, my son's always like, oh, Mrs. So-and-so said this, Mrs. So-and-so said that. I know that's his I know the librarian's name. I know the music teacher's name. Like, I know their names because I talk to my kids. So, it's one of those things too, where it's like, as men, they get applauded for just simply bringing the lunchbox that was forgotten. But as a woman, if we said we didn't know the teacher's name, we would be judged for that, right?
So
right.
We're working against different expectations. And so the men are sitting there being like, I'm doing a good job. Like, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
I'm doing better than my dad did. We always hear, like, millennial dads are doing so much more than their dads did. But there's research. I don't know if you read the book Having It All by Corinne Lowe. She's an economist. And there's research to show that, yes, men are doing exponentially more than their parents did. But guess what? Women are doing more than their parents did. So if you actually look, the gender gap has gotten wider, because what has happened is men's housework and their paid work is the same as it was, say, in the 70s. Women's housework is down a little bit because of things like the microwave and dishwashers, which is great. It's down a little bit. but their parenting time has gone up exponentially. So their parenting time has gone up exponentially because we are so much more involved as parents these days. We spend so much more time with them. And so we don't have that same, we say men are doing more, but women are doing more.
We're doing more too. Yeah. I mean, there were solid like 8 hours a day when my mom in the 80s didn't have kids because we were like out riding bikes all day.
Right.
Like
We were just talking about this in our last episode.
Yeah. 24/7. We are with them, which is the mental load when you are with them and involved with them and coordinating that 24/7. Yeah.
And I think that's something that we bring up a lot on our podcast. Like I said, we said in our last episode that boredom is something that we have to allow our kids to have. It doesn't mean they don't need us 24/7. It's okay if we are doing something else or taking care of ourselves and they play alone outside for a bit, and that's good for them to be creative. We don't have to be there 24/7. That's something that we're putting that pressure on ourselves. But then at the same time, also, dad can go out there and play with them too.
I do think sometimes moms put the pressure on ourselves or not that we're at fault, but I have many friends that are like, well, I can go on a girls' trip, but I have to cook all the meals before I go. I have to lay out all the kids' clothes. I have to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, no, you don't. Well, yeah, because dad won't know how to dress them. No, I promise he will. It may not be the same as how you would do, but I promise you he can't. So I do think sometimes we put that on ourselves unnecessarily. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky. I also think there's just there's just so many layers to this conversation, right? There's so many different aspects to this conversation. And I think, it's very, very hard to fix these dynamics in our house without kind of zooming out, right? Like, I think so often people are like, okay, well, my husband's going to do this and I'm going to do that. But if you don't actually have these bigger conversations about like how we're judged and how we're expected to show up and how it's totally normal for men to have a golf league once a week. But if a woman had a league where she was supposed to go once a week, we'd be like, wow, like, I can't believe she makes so much time for herself, right? It's like we have these different expectations. And so we move through the world differently. And I think that's why it's so hard to have these conversations and to change these dynamics, period, like at all. And, we talk about the mental load as it relates to our home, but this stuff bleeds into the workplace. It bleeds into the motherhood penalty and the wage gap and all the things. And so it's a lot. It's a lot for sure. And I think that, it's a complex topic and weirdly controversial, which I never would have imagined, like ever, when I started talking about this. Which I think also makes it really hard to talk about, right? Because some people have very differing opinions on it.
Yeah.
I feel like people I've been surprised that people get defensive about certain things with it.
Yeah.
That I don't understand that.
Well, let me tell you, thank you so much for talking about it and not shying away from it. And I will tell you that anytime I share any of your stuff with my girlfriends or my husband, I share it all the time. And all my girlfriends say, oh my gosh, like, yes, I feel seen, or, oh my gosh, that's what I've been trying to tell my husband, or, okay, I'm going to sit down and have this conversation tonight. So thank you for doing that and sharing your insight and your voice and your honesty, because I really think the more women know about it and can verbalize it, I do think it's going to help with that conversation and make them feel, less alone. And it leads to, like you said, burnout and all of the things. It's just a snowball effect.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that the more we talk about it, the more we change these dynamics. Because I think if we don't talk about it, nothing changes. And so we have to keep talking about all of these things, because the louder you are, the more attention it gets, the more normalized it becomes, the more we feel validated, and the more things can change.
Yes.
And listeners, if this episode even hit a little bit, go follow She's a Paige Turner at Instagram and her content on the mental load. It might just help you name what you have felt for years.
Yes. And we will link your Instagram, and you have a couple of resources. I believe you had even a guide to starting the conversation. Don't you, Paige?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a free guide, which links to a bunch of books. It links to recommendations on how to start making the invisible labor visible. And so for people who are looking to start these conversations, but not really sure where to begin, hopefully those will be useful tools.
Well, fabulous. We will make sure those are all in our show notes. And as always, Bronze Medal Moms, bronze still gets you a place on the podium. See you next time, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to our moms on Broad's Middle Moms.
Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. See you soon.
Hair up high, coffee in my hand, baby on my hip, still making a stand. Oh yeah. Burnt toast breakfast, cartoons way too loud, mascara smudge, but I'm still proud. Carpool chaos, homework on the floor, I'm tying tiny shoes like I'm heading on tour. Sometimes I'm raging in the minivan line, sometimes I'm crying in the bathroom fine, but I lace up my heart like leather and chrome. Every crazy day I bring it home. I'm momming like a rock star, doing dishes like a dive bar. Yeah, the crowd is three, but they scream for me. Whoa. I'm momming like a rock star, perfect mess in a big heart. Give it all I've got, even when I'm falling apart. I'm momming like a rock star. Laundry mountain staring me down, glitter in my hair like a rhinestone crown. Science fair meltdown, costumes all wrong, so we hot glue glory and we sing our song. Sometimes I'm praying at the kitchen sink, sometimes it's cereal and frozen drinks, but I show up on time for every small show. Every tiny win is all I wanna know. I'm momming like a rock star, doing dishes like a dive bar. Yeah, the crowd is three, but they scream for me. Whoa. I'm momming like a rock star, perfect mess in a big heart. Give it all I've got, even when I'm falling apart. I'm momming like a rock star. Raise your bottles, raise your bras. Every time, mama, you're a backstage star. We got split up stains, we got battle scars, but we tuck them in like we tune our guitars. Oh. We're momming like a rock star, doing dishes like a dive bar. Yeah, the crowd is three, but they scream for me. Scream for me. We're momming like a rock star, perfect mess in a big heart. Give it all we've got, even when we're falling apart. We're momming like a rock star. Hair up high, hands in the air, trying our best, yeah.